So our next speaker is Bruce Jones. He works for PayPal and is head of North America Developers Evangelism. And he has extensive experience with developer evangelism. And at PayPal right now, he's a group of developer evangelists. And before PayPal, he has worked as developer evangelist for different companies like Verifone, HTC, and NetJam. He also founded the group, the Developer Evangelist group on LinkedIn. Welcome, Bruce Jones.
Hi, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Thank you. I'm really excited to be talking to everybody today, primarily because I feel like I'm among peers. I know many of you. I've seen many of you at conferences. A few of you, we've had drinks late at night together. So it's good to see everybody awake. If you have any questions and you want to interrupt, that's fine. But if you'd like to hold them to the end, I think I'm going to have time for that as well. Today, I think I'm going to talk about the fundamentals of what we do, at least the way I see it. And let's just get into it and see how it goes. Here's my hope for today. I hope to give you a new perspective. I hope for you to be able to explain to your mother what it is that you do for a living. And I want to help you predict the future. Is that fair enough? Raise of hands, does that meet anybody in the audience? Okay, I've got one person interested.
Especially the mother bullet.
Mother bullet, all right. Very nice. Again, I'm Bruce Jones. This is my Twitter handle at @BMCCJ. Please send me a tweet, connect with me on LinkedIn, anything that works for you. I started off life as a C programmer. I did that for many years with very complex business applications. And then I went back to the University of Chicago, got an MBA in marketing. I was an entrepreneur. I had 2 startups. I've been a developer evangelist now for my 4th time. And I really enjoy it because it's a great place to mix the technology and the marketing MBA and to use the communication skills. And I actually do like going out and socializing. Show of hands, please. How many people have children in their lives at some level? Great. Pretty much everybody. I like to think of them as the future adopters. And how many people in this room think that they're early adopters? Okay, a couple. And it just sort of, from early adopters, we have to know a little bit about the future of what's coming so that we can do it. It's how we do our jobs, is to help sell to people who are later adopters than ourselves. But how many people what do you think is the life expectancy of the kids born, in the last couple of years? Any guesses out there? 70? 90? 100? Okay. Who knows who this guy is?
Vikings?
He looks like a Viking, doesn't he? Look, check out the pint. Right? This is Aubrey DeGray. He's actually a Facebook friend of mine. But Aubrey is the chief scientist with SENS. And Aubrey has some really good research that shows that the first person who's going to reach the age of 150 has already been born. He's actually in Mountain View, pretty approachable guy. So both of us celebrate a birthday this year. We're going to maybe get together. This is Al Gore. I've met Al a couple times. He just put out a new book. If you want to learn more about the future, this is highly recommended. He talks about 6 things that are going on and changing the world. That we're one big global enterprise, that we've all got a global mind with the internet, that power is shifting for the first time. The United States is no longer the power player that it was, that we've an economic compass that's screwed up, that we're paying for things we shouldn't be and not paying for things we should be, that there's going to be changes in neuroscience and medical research, and just that with population growth and everything else that humans are doing. So highly recommend this read. You want to be a futurist. Now, who knows who this is? A little more famous guy. This is Michio Kaku. He's a quantum physicist, wrote string theory. I read quantum physics. Why, I'm not really sure, but I listen to it in the car as I'm going to work. But he basically wrote this book called Physics of the Future. It's really great for us as technologists to understand when things are going to be changing in the next 100 years and to expect them to come. When will copper just be too slow to work? When will we go to fiber? When will we go to neural networks? Some of the things that he's predicting are contact lenses, where you have a video screen on one side. The other side is a camera. So anything that you see with your eye, when your eyes are open, you're transmitting everything that you see. So imagine an app where in your eye you recognize the person. I come up and look at you, and it recognizes who you are, and then it tells me the last time we interacted and what your name was and what I should remember. A complete CRM system with your contact lenses. And the point that I got out of this, another one was that paint will actually be replaced by LCD screens, that LCD technology will be cheaper than paint. So it will be cheaper in a restaurant or nightclub to have a daytime paint and a nighttime paint, but to do it through technology. And then we've got the machine-to-machine talking. So another great read, but also a really good incentive for us as people in the developer relations community, because for the next 100 years, 150 years, people are going to have new devices that they're going to need programmers for. And how are we going to go off and market to these programmers and get them to do our bidding? So we talk about early adopters and the adoption curve and the kids being the future adopters, but not often do we actually look at the adoption curve. How many people have seen the full adoption curve before? So a couple. But I like to use this as a time scale. So here's where I think I live on the adoption curve. Early adopter, sort of trying out things new, innovating a little bit, but not a lot. I'm up there. And then I think this is about where my mother lives. And so I think that this is the delay between me and my mom. So it's sort of like, when did I get an iPhone? When did mom get an iPhone? When am I going to go on Instagram? When will mom go on Instagram? So in your own lives, you probably have somebody who's ahead of you on the adoption curve and behind you. And you can sort of say, how fast is something being adopted by how fast it goes from you to that other person. We have the late majority, the laggards. This was invented, by the way, because they were looking at farmers buying seeds, farmers buying hybrid seeds. And the ones who were willing to try the new seeds were up there, and the established conservative farmers were back here. So show of hands, people who remember faxing. Would you say that faxing was something that you might have seen come into your life, and then it went up the adoption curve and then back down? So So we can say that that's well adopted now. Character recognition. Do you remember when you first sort of saw it, it didn't really work, and nowadays we can scan just about everything? Yeah? Voice recognition. It used to be really funny that a couple of years ago, Google Voice, where I thought it was sort of psychic, it would tell me things that the person hadn't actually said, but I thought that the person meant. You know, it's sort of like, So here's one more. So everybody who thinks they're an early adopter, again, raise your hand, please. Because I want to see how many hands go down if you have not adopted this new technology. Okay. Keep them up for a second. Early adopters. Brainwave recognition. Who's using that? Are you?
We actually gave out these cat ears that
Yeah.
wiggle the ears based on brainwave recognition. Developers love to just giveaways too, so.
Yeah. So how many people in the room are willing to raise their hands and say, didn't know what was happening? Thank you. Thank you for being honest. So in 2010, Tan Lee got up on stage for TED Talks and started talking about the emotive brainwave recognition device. In 2012, September, University in China had this handicapped individual driving this AR drone with his brainwaves. He's wearing the headset right there. This is December, just last December. We're on Kickstarter. The Puzzle Box guys, same guys who did the ears, raised $75,000 for a production model of the helicopter controlled by the brainwaves, which I believe you can buy now for $250. So my question is, as people in the business of selling to developers, getting developers to, I predict the future, prediction, shortly some company like this will have an API available where they will encourage app developers to build the next game for brain-controlled helicopters. Is that a fair prediction? Okay, I've met part one. You can now predict the future. All right. So, but imagine if you have the job of selling that brainwave API to people, either the part where we're getting smarter about how to look at brainwaves and interpret them and just make the recognition better, or the part about gamifying and having helicopters flying with brainwaves. But so imagine that's your job for the next 20 minutes. So the way I look at it is I use this really basic MBA methodology, the 4 Ps and the 3 Cs. Anybody in the room ever heard of it? That doesn't work for me. So this came out of my time at the University of Chicago. They drilled it into me. And when we look at any business plan as an entrepreneur or anything, we go through the 4 Ps, 3 Cs. Really easy to remember. Product. What's the product you're selling? So in this case, there's 2 products. There's the brainwave helicopter. The second product is the API. So I want you to think of the API as the product. The second part is price. And when we talk about price for APIs, it's not necessarily the cost of buying them from the company, because nowadays I'm mostly working in the free space where we give away the APIs and hope that people will build to them, but it's the cost of development. What's the cost it costs that developer to actually implement your APIs over time? Place, where are you meeting the developers? Are you doing it online? Are you emailing them? Are you doing some field work as well? And then promotion. And this is where you see the normal stuff where people think they're marketers, where they come in there and it's got a bunch of t-shirts and they're giving away discounts and they're giving away benefits and they're co-promoting. That stuff's all really great, but many of it actually devalues your brand. We talk about the 3 Cs, talk about the company, and in our case it's those of us who are out promoting that API. The competition, and in this case it's what are the other things that developer could be doing with his time instead of building for us. He could be building for some other API that's directly in the space, or he could be building for an API that has nothing to do with our space. So we have to make our space, our brainwave helicopter API, much more exciting to that developer than any of the other spaces he might go spend time in. And then there's customers, and again, you need to divide that up into 2 areas. For us, for our API that we're selling, it's developers. for the people using the brainwave helicopter. It's the end consumers of that. So I'm going to go through those, and not in the same order that I presented them, but just to reinforce the 4 P's, the 3 C's. First of all, we got this product. And in this case, it's this brainwave helicopter and this crazy entrepreneur who developed it. That together is the product in general, but you don't actually see the API anywhere in there. With the place, I like to do field events. I do like to do groups and meetups and conferences with the developers in the technology suite space that I'm in. I might try to find people that are specializing in brainwave recognition and go hang out with them and figure out what they like to do. Come up with cool events that they might like. Emailing, for sure. A complete CRM campaign, which I'm going to rename in a few slides. And then this whole new categories that's really happening nowadays. VCs, incubators, excubators, accelerators, vertical accelerators, hackerspaces, peer evangelists. Just talking to your friends about where the developers are. And it's interesting, the new things that are happening here, the vertical accelerators. So maybe somewhere there's some accelerator starting up that specializes in people who are coding this brainwave recognition. I'd want to locate in that building. The whole idea of back when we were in the walled garden, you'd have an incubator within your company and you develop those prospects and you help those entrepreneurs grow. And now we're doing that externally. So much more like an excubator that we're investing in instead of something that's inside our walled garden. Promotion. Again, this is the stuff that I'm not going to talk about too much today because I think everybody knows about this, but I'm going to give you a bargain if you develop. I'm going to pay you. I'm going to give you some big grand prize. I'm going to give you t-shirts. I'm going to have co-promotion with it. I like all of those things and I've used them, but I can tell you that the best promotions I've done have been pizza hacks on a regular basis, about $800 a month. The same people would come in, and finally, about the third or fourth or fifth visit, they would build me a beautiful app. The best app story I ever had was a hackathon that I actually gave the winner giant zucchini from my garden. And she was really proud of it and blogged it and started a business, and then went and won with that exact same app $100,000 from my competition. So that app cost me a zucchini, it cost them $100,000. This is one of the events I did at DroidCon London a couple of years ago with HTC. But you can see that we really had this thing set up for being able to both be in the right place and promote. And we gave away a bunch of t-shirts, and then we would have regular sort of swarm the booth and listen to us for a while and then get some giveaway stuff. And then when we talk about the company that is promoting this API, us in the room with our imaginary company promoting, are we perceived to be cool? Are we trustworthy? It's really important. Where will our APIs be in the future, and should the developers invest their time with us? And by trustworthy, I think this is a really important part is, if the developer's going to invest their time and commit to you, can they trust that you will be there in a year from now? Or is your API going to disappear? Is your program going to disappear? Are you going to churn it by changing the calls to the API every month or something like that? So this gets into the trustworthy part, because that's actually more expensive than the initial development. And then when we talk about the people and roles, I want to talk just a little bit about the difference I perceive in the titles. So somebody who's doing developer marketing, I see them as doing a whole bunch of, sort of the traditional promotional signage and messaging and branding exercises, sort of light on content, on technical content. A developer advocate, I actually don't like this title. I know some companies like it. I don't like it because I think that it denotes that you are market research, that your job is to listen to the customer and take back all their feedback and change the product with it. And if you can't deliver on that promise, then you just, by your title alone, you've just made a promise you can't keep. I've just promised you I'm going to listen to you and change my product based on what you say, and in some companies I don't have the power to do that. they'll listen to me, they may not change it. A technical evangelist is a pretty pure title. This is somebody who is really rock solid technically, similar to the IBM fellows. And they're going to go off and they're going to be really solid technically. You might not have the presentation skills that the developer marketing person would have. And then the developer evangelist. I really think that's that sort of middle ground of the person who can still walk through code on the screen, can still maybe do a demo with the code, can explain it, can help people out with technical questions or find the right people at a hackathon, but they really have strong communication skills, can get up on stage and talk about anything at the drop of a hat. You should be able to give them a slide deck in 5 minutes and they should get up and speak about it. On Quora, I wrote this article on how to measure these candidates when you are interviewing them. And I want to just share the basic thoughts here. I score people on 3 measures, D, E, and M. Are you very strong as a developer? So a giant D, you're very technical and relevant in the technology. Right now, you've just built an app using the technology you're about to sell. The evangelist, am I going to be able to send them to a cocktail party and they're going to be able to bring back business cards and meet people and network with the right people, talking in the small circles, and then being able to get up and speak on stage to the big crowds. And then M, which originally I think I called it marketing, but I'm going to call it money, because this is the spot where you might be really good at both of these things, but you're just not making good business decisions on return on your money. And I really want somebody here who's opportunistic, who when they're in a crowd and they see something happening, that they're willing to make the decisions that are going to bring back high return for the company. Both in more strategy decisions and then in the smaller decisions, like what happened to me the other night at South by Southwest. So I was at South by Southwest, I was at the cloud party where they invited all these people with really high cloud scores to come and see Cirque du Soleil. It was at the end of the Innovate part. All of us were living on 3 hours of sleep and massive partying for a week, and everybody was hungry and cranky and there was no food. And we were stuck in this building waiting for Cirque du Soleil to show up for about 3 hours. And here are some of the most influential social media people in the world, all huddled together, and they're pissed because they're hungry and they don't want to lose their seat at the conference, and where's the food? And so Bruce from PayPal ordered 5 pizzas and ran downstairs and brought back up 5 large pizzas, and I got all these cool tweets about, thank you PayPal Dev for giving us food at this event. And I didn't sponsor the event, it didn't cost, I was there because I had a high cloud score too. And $100, and I got all this great coverage, it was awesome. So who's your competition in the API space that you're in? We talked about that a little bit, and it's not just, there's nobody else doing brainwave helicopters. It's also, there's all these other cool sort of robot toys going on, and they actually have larger, potential consumer groups that you'd be selling into if you develop for them. Consumers, again, repeating the thing that I'm talking about, consumers of the API, the developers, not consumers in the final product, and just to stay focused on them as they're your true consumers. You should treat them like consumers when you communicate to them. You should treat them in a customer service method. In fact, I would prefer if my APIs all returned really nice verbose statements. Dear customer, I'm sorry you don't have your product key entered properly. Here's the link to how to fix it. I think that whole dialogue with the developers needs to be at that white glove customer relationship level. So moving in to talk about these consumers, these developers just a little bit, let's just talk about how they've evolved a little bit. If you think back to sort of the original days, some of us may have gotten coding, it was in university and maybe as a professional, and you'd go off and buy $1,000 worth of books to have manuals for it, and your company would pay for that training and the books, and you would develop in some really small segment of business development relationships. It'd be the OEM, the carrier, and 2 or 3 people who wrote apps for that. But now everybody who writes HTML can publish, And then we've now become independent developers, independent knowledge workers. So this has really evolved from somebody who needed an infrastructure to work for a living to people down here who can do it out of their garage. But that doesn't mean that we should treat them like they're homeless people working out of a garage. And that they have a lot of free time and they want to give us stuff. So people come in and they want to have a relationship with developers. Like, hey, VP of marketing comes to me and says, hey, I want you to go off and get developers to code to our API. Go find some guys, find some dudes in a garage with some spare time. I don't know if you recognize that these are the guys who started Google, right, in their garage. It doesn't really work that way. And this is the first term I want to trademark. Pragati told me to do that, but it's good. So let's just say that we're moving from crowdsourcing to developer sourcing. And when we think of crowdsourcing, it's easy, right? It's easy to think that Twitter is getting all their content crowd provided in 80 characters or less. All that content is crowdsourced. People are sending their tweets in. It's very easy for crowdsourcing to happen in this sort of thing. People submit their pictures and their tweets all the time, and we think that's pretty easy now. We're used to crowdsourcing. And our VPs of marketing or product have seen that, and they're saying, hey, that's really easy. Go get some developers to do that too. And they want you to do developer sourcing. So they want you to have a developer go and implement your APIs and put it into the app and connect it up, and that it's going to be just as easy as just finding these guys to do it, but then we're going to do it for free. So we're going to give them the API for free, and they're going to do the coding for free. And it's really, I think we've evolved now to developer sourcing. We are actually in this world now where there are 500,000 developers out there, and we want them to give us stuff for free. Does that concept resonate with anybody? Is that some nodding there? I haven't heard of it anywhere else. I think it's fine. So let's get inside the heads of these people that we want to do free things for us. We want to have a relationship with them. Who are they? This is how I look at them when I'm trying to manipulate anybody. And I say manipulate in the best positive way, because that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to go out, interact with them, meet them, and then get them to try out my API and then adopt my API. So I think about who are they, what do they believe now, and what do they do today. Then I think about on the other side of it, which ones of these can we influence? What do we want them to believe when we're done talking to them? And what's the action that we want them to do? So we may start off with, they think we suck, and we want them to think we're marginal. Or we may start off with, there are many options out there, but that one isn't the best, for them to think, there are a few options and I should try that one. Or they should think, hey, I need to develop something right now, and this is the best option out there. So the answers to these questions depend upon the mindset of the people that you're trying to reach and what you're trying to get them to do. And based upon looking at both columns here, then you can think in the middle here, well, what's going to take me from they ignore me to they learn more about me? So I say price to the end, because I think this is the most relevant piece of it. It's one of the 4 Ps, but for this, I think it's important. So I think developer relations is like dating. I think it's like dating in a bar. There's a big bar filled with developers, and you want to run into that bar, and you want to ask them a couple things. And we'll walk through it, but you're going to go up, imagine going up to a stranger, and I can pick somebody in the room here, and just running up to them, because this is a VP of marketing sometimes at other companies, wants me to do. Just run into the room of developers and get them to implement your API. Why aren't more developers implementing our API? Go get them. Can you imagine storming, some large social gathering and running up to some potential significant other and saying, hey, let's get married, and I want you to give me your car. And nobody's going to do that without a little bit of, let's get to know each other. Let's decide if we want to do this. Let's see, if you're a credible partner. So let's talk about the cost of development. I generally think that the cost of implementing an API, fully QA tested, getting it rolled out into production in any serious environment is 1 man month. When I talk to people who run engineering organizations, they tell me that 1 man month is $12,500. So that's worth a used car. And once it's in there, it's a commitment to maintain it and extend the relationship and to go off further for it. So when you're asking a developer to try out your API and commit to it and build it into their production plan and roll it out, you're asking for a commitment plus a car. And I think that we have to be aware of that, because that means that we have to treat these developers maybe a little differently, maybe a little bit more, we have to learn more about them. So the words I'd like to trademark are 2. Developer relationship management. I think we're moving from customer relationship management to DRM, developer relationship management. When we want to see a full social profile of somebody, we want to see where they are on LinkedIn or Twitter or Facebook. We want to see what they're saying about us. We want to know what other technologies they're doing. We want to sort of see their picture and where they're located. And in my ultimate world, I would have this wonderful, really good database where I knew everything about my developers. Just general fundamentals. We work for a funnel where we bring people in from our lists and our events and business card scanning, and we get them into our DRM system. And then talking about measurement and reporting back to management and selling this to management, we deal with a pipeline. And so I don't know if the back row can read this, but I tend to measure it as I want people to be aware of my APIs, to consider and trust my APIs, maybe do some trial of it, and then get into using it. And then if they like it all, then we'll get married and we'll have a commitment. Along the way here, you can measure each moment of this, and it often makes sense if you're defending your business plan and your budget to talk in terms of, what was my cost per awareness, and how did I change my awareness? So I made 50,000 people more aware, and it cost me 25 cents each. I made more people consider and trust me, and that jumped up at $1 each. I had people try me for something, $200 each, and then using it and then committing to it. So instead of just being measured by how many apps did you get built, you're measured all the way along the process of how many people sort of move through the funnel and then build the apps for us. So I like to do benchmark studies when I see that my competitors are running programs. I can't talk specifically about it, but I like to look out and estimate how much do I think they spent for the apps that they got, and how much did I spend for my apps I got, and then I can sort of tell how I'm doing in comparison to them. Pretty basic fundamental thing. I've seen in the past, there's been some where I've been more expensive than others where I've had this level of difference, where I got 50 apps for less than $1,000 each, and my competitor got the same apps 6 months after I got them for over $10,000 each. So hopefully a new perspective on what we do, or at least what I think I do. Hopefully you can explain to your mother sort of that you're selling to people at a different stage of the technology lifestyle that she might be on. Or you can explain to her something else about marriage and cars. Thanks for laughing. And then predicting the future, how we really think that this career is going to be out for another 100 years, and there's going to be new technology every year, and it's changing really fast. A word from my sponsor. My new developer portal, it launched March 8th. Thank you. Developer.paypal.com, at PayPal Dev, and you can email us at developer@paypal.com as well. New RESTful APIs with native kits for developers, and they seem to love it. They seem to love it so far. How to connect to me? Twitter and our my handle. And happy kids. So, any questions?
I have a question. Can you give some examples of how you measure success at each stage of the funnel?
Yeah, I think it's really tough, but
I need to. That's why I asked.
yeah, and so that's why I think it's really tough. But I think that we, as developer evangelists, have to have defensible budgets, because if you're in a small company or big company, and you are in a place where you have to defend your budget, you need to be able to go in and say, here's the value, we determine it. I like to put in the measurements before I start to try to be able to know that I'll be able to get the numbers out of it afterwards. I do use Google Analytics to just see clicks, and I might see them, around an event, or if I'm driving traffic to that. That's one way to measure awareness, that I was able to drive a bunch of clicks for something. We can do surveys and do some research with that, and I'm sure the folks from Evans Data would be happy to talk to you about that. And they do a great job with it, where you could measure before you launched and then after you launched, and you could find out, how much did you move the needle on some key indicators. The other things you can do is just talk about how many eyeballs you were able to get, how many business cards you were able to collect, how many sort of after-mentioned tweets. The PR department, when you're working in conjunction with them, can talk about, just what buzz were you able to create. So we just launched our new portal at South by Southwest, and soon afterwards got this long report about all the coverage we got around the world, and I would consider all that awareness. And any follow-up to that?
Yeah, I guess I was curious about examples of other stages of the funnel as well, especially between awareness and conversion. How do you measure?
Yeah, so on our on different developer websites, I'm trying to be careful not to talk about specific companies. You can put in analytic hooks on your developer portal to moments where they've actually downloaded your developer kit, or moments where they've actually implemented a test app or made some call within their app that that's their first hello world. Mm-hmm. And you can say, oh, they've actually compiled it and tried it once.
Do you have any examples for the, I think you call it consideration stage?
That one is more soft, and I would do that more at a big hackathon or something like that, where some team got together and built something, or we were measuring sort of intuitive awareness thing. You could also do that by views. So you could do that by web views for your analytics, for somebody that's reading through your site. How many people got to that page about, where you're actually reading about the developer kit? So it's normally 1 or 2 pages in, and how many views got to that page, unique viewers of that page, versus last month.
Can you give us an example of how people are developing their data?
I can't specifically talk about PayPal now.
Okay. Can you have
Yeah, we can talk about it afterwards.
I like the term DRM.
Yeah, thank you.
That's interesting. And I just wanted to know.
I want credit.
You're not the only one using it.
All right.
Yeah.
When did you start?
About a year. About 2 years ago.
Okay, Gina, you might have me beat.
So is there any practical advice on the types of, can I use a CRM software to do the same thing? Does it have to be different because the business logic in a CRM software is different? How do you manage your developer?
So it depends on different companies, because many of the companies will have some of the business development functions rolled into a CRM already. And it's really convenient if you're wrapped into that, so that when you have a great lead and it then works its way into the business development group and they can make some deal or partnership with them. So, things like Salesforce or Zendesk work really well for that. But you want to get them to enable the social media triggers so that when you're in there, it's not just the traditional business development stuff, but it's just slightly more expensive where you're getting the social media. Yeah, I'd really like a cloud score, like on, what's my influencer score on each of these people so that I know, whose tweets I can ignore and whose tweets I need to respond to. Something like that.
So you see it as this tooling and process and business logic is similar between customer relationship management and developer relationship management? Or do you think they're
I haven't seen it unique. I haven't seen
they have a different tool and process set?
Yeah, I think you need to be a little bit more intimate with it because, as we talked about it at some earlier bits, these developers like different places. So I'd like to see who's going to Stack Overflow or who's going to G+, right? And so that you're not going to normally get that, but you might be able to enable something in one of those two tools that sort of checks into those spaces.
And you can use tools like Unitum where you can do lead scoring, but in this case, you're not really treating them as leads, but you can capture out every activity they do and, see how many times they did different things and then which can then, you can automate asking them to do the next thing, so you can have kind of a multi-touch approach.
And you can even gamify the process by having levels. If they do things, then you can unlock them to other things, right? Like, again, levels.
And do you see these kinds of tools? I mean, like you mentioned Salesforce. Are companies recognizing this developer relations and maybe building some of the stuff that you're talking about so that you could buy a package, third party?
I actually think the gamify guys are doing it as well. They're getting you to get more of more knowledge about the developers that way, and encouraging them to tell you more about them, because that's part of the bargain. Is what are you giving them for them to give you more of their information? But I haven't seen anybody that's got a specific developer package for Salesforce or developer package for Zendesk. But I'd be very interested in it if they had it.
Yeah. And the other tools are like marketing automation tools. So you can capture data about people and make decisions based on their actions. And so you can modify them for any kind of customer.
Great.
Is there a hand in the back? Can we answer it? I think we're almost out of time, but maybe one more question if anybody's got one. They're waiting, so we're done. Thank you very much.
I wonder if you're going to weigh in on that DRM.
That's my word.
I tweeted if he wants to trademark this thing, I better get a time machine. Excuse me.
I think we've done about 2 hours so far. Yeah. Yeah, but we're coming to the next conference right now. No, it's kind of scary. It's almost funny when you have serious conversations with people where they're kind of moving up and down and stuff with the ears and stuff. Yeah. No, something we missed out on. We've actually it's been funny though. We gave a ton out we just paid for just because we thought they'd be fun. We didn't brand them at all. But sometimes we're never thinking ahead. So we're actually getting a new guy.
So I already sent my presentation to folks. So you have, great, so it's available.
Sorry, so we'll talk more. I'll be around too.
Okay.
Okay, sounds good, thanks.
Oh, thank you.
So I got
Sorry?
His group LinkedIn guys develop community
Drugs to doctors to recommend.
Okay, all right.
as opposed to a
A little
developer.
bit. It is a little bit like, it is a little bit like,
Yeah, sure.
yeah, I guess so. Like a pharmaceutical rep.
I just have my.
Yeah, the guy who shows up at the doctor's office and gets them.
Categorizes there.
It's a little bit different.
So the slides that I gave you.
We have to deal with people who are inventing things. And so sometimes we get on our stage and tell them stories about the things
There's
that
global
they
and then like
can invent.
regional and
And
specific.
with our tool that doesn't exist yet, that might make them
Kind of
money. And we have to put this like,
similar,
seed of a
different.
dream in their
It's
head
kind of
to get them to do all these
handy
things and
this week
spend
if we can
2 or 3
compare
bands
notes
with
on.
us. Just on a dream. It's a little bit more.
Yeah, my notes right now are jumbled mess.
Oh, sure, but I mean,
Yeah.
I'll be back.
Yeah. I'm glad you,
And it's like, thank you.
Well, thank you very much.
Oh.
Or maybe technical difficulties or something.
I'd be happy to.
Yes.
That would be great.
And I said, like,
Nice to
I'd like
meet you.
continue discussion.
And is it for an executive for your company? Yeah. So I'd be very interested. I'd be very interested. I'd like to go to the end.
Okay.
Thank you.
45 minutes. I mean, the time allotted will be like probably right on. And then I'll just, if I take any questions, I'll just take them after the presentation.
Ning, will you be here these 2 days?
No, I'll be here only today.
Okay.
But are you local?
I am.
I can always see you.
Yeah, perfect.
That's fine.
I'm very excited. I'd love to talk to them. Thank you.
Good.